صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا. ذلك اليوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا. إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Thank you so much, Brother Muhammad Rizvi, for the beautiful recitation of the Holy Quran. Firstly, I would like to extend my deepest condolences to all of you for the anniversary of the martyrdom of Lady Fatima alayhi salam. Just a quick reminder that after the program, we will be serving dinner in the gym, inshallah. Without any further ado, please help me in welcoming Shaykh Murtaza to the minbar with 3 of your loudest salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. أما بعد، سلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. We are commemorating the Shahada of Lady Fatima Zahraa alayha salam on this evening. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us in learning from her life, in walking in her footsteps, and acquiring her shafa'ah on the Day of Judgment. She was part of building the first Islamic community with the Prophet of Allah. And the Prophet of Allah was building the first Islamic community in the city of Medina. This was a very unique community. It was supposed to be a platform, and it became a platform for building an Islamic civilization. The Prophet of Allah was not just building a new tribe. The Prophet of Allah was not just building a new alliance. The Prophet of Allah was not just building a new place. He was building an Islamic community that was going to become an inspiration for other communities. And that's a very important discussion for us, because in some ways we too are also trying to build Islamic communities in the West. And inshallah, our hope is that one day these communities are also going to become an inspiration. They are going to become role models, and they are going to become the teachers for other communities as well. Now, in the lifetime of the Holy Prophet, the Muslims did not have a lot of resources. They did not have a lot of wealth. They did not have sometimes a large number of people. But they had certain qualities. And these qualities became very important. These are the qualities of a strong and resilient community. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He highlights these qualities for us in the Quran. In Surah Al-Hashr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights the qualities of the Muhajirin, and He highlights for us the qualities of the Ansar. So in verse number 9, Allah speaks about the Ansar of Medina. And He says, وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا الدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. And those who prepared the land, the Dar of Hijrah, the land of Medina, and they also prepared the hearts before the Muhajirin to be able to welcome the Muhajirin to the city of Medina. يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ. They love those who have migrated towards them. They love the Muhajirin who have come from the city of Medina, from the city of Mecca. Okay? Accepting immigrants is not an easy task. Today you find in many Western countries, they are no longer as welcoming to immigrants. South of the border, the new president to come has said that he is going to deport 1 million immigrants every year. Okay? And the situation is not very different in Canada either. A little bit of inconvenience, and people develop a phobia and animosity for immigrants. They want to blame immigrants for all of their problems. When the Muhajirin came from Mecca to Medina, the Ansar had to make a lot of accommodations for them. The Ansar had to sacrifice a lot for them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights this for us in the Quran. He says, يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ. Not only they accepted the Muhajirin that came, they loved the Muhajirin that had come. And then Allah says, وَلَا يَجِدُونَ فِي صُدُورِهِمْ حَاجَةً مِمَّا أُوتُوا. The second quality that you find amongst the Ansar is that they did not find in their hearts a need for the things that were given to the Muhajirin. Okay? This verse, they say, was revealed after one of the battles. And the Prophet of Allah took the spoils of the battle, took the spoils of war, and he said to the Ansar, I want to give these spoils of war to the Muhajirin. And he gave the Ansar an option. And the Ansar said to the Holy Prophet, we do not want any of the spoils of war. Give it all to the Muhajirin. Because they sacrificed their homes. They sacrificed their lives in Mecca to be able to come to Medina. So give everything to them. My dear brothers and sisters, one of the keys to a strong community is that whenever we see that somebody is progressing in the community, we should be happy for them. We should support them. And we should recognize that if a person grows in our community, it means that the whole community is going to benefit from it. The strength of a person translates into the strength of the community. There's no need to be jealous for them. Okay? And then Allah highlights the third quality. And that's the quality that we want to talk about today. Allah says, وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. And they are willing to sacrifice the things that they have, even though they themselves need it. They give preference to the muhajirin over themselves. They say when the muhajirin came to Medina, the Ansar were so generous with the muhajirin. They shared their homes with them. They shared their horses with them. They shared their property with them. They shared their wealth with them. They shared their food with them. Some of them took everything they had, half of it, they gave it to the muhajirin. So this is the concept of ithar. Ithar means sacrifice. Strong communities are built by the quality of sacrifice. Okay? In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this verse of the Quran, وَمَن يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And those who are able to protect themselves from their own miserliness, their own attachment to the dunya, these are the people who are going to be successful. Right? So one of the qualities that we need to be able to develop amongst ourselves that is going to become a source of strength for our community is the quality of sacrifice, the quality of ithar, the quality of being able to give preference to others sometimes over ourselves. Now, when we look into the early history of Islam, we see that the families also had this quality. The old and the young shared in this quality. In some of the tafasir, we are told that this verse was revealed when a man came to the Holy Prophet. فَاشْتَكَى إِلَيْهِ الْجُوعُ. He complained to the Holy Prophet about his hunger. So the Prophet of Allah sent him to one of his homes. فَقَالَتْ زَوْجَتُهُ. The wife of the Prophet said to him, مَا عِنْدَنَا إِلَّا الْمَاءِ. We have nothing in our home except for water to drink. So the man came back to the masjid. And he said to the Holy Prophet, I am still hungry. So the Prophet of Allah asked, مَنْ لِهَذَا الرَّجُلْ اللَّيْلَةِ. Who is going to take responsibility for this man on this night? Okay. You find in the early history of Islam, the Muslims sometimes did not have a lot, but they had a very big heart. Okay. So in the hadith we are told that a man came to the Holy Prophet, request you to come forward with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And in the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we are told that this person was none other than Amirul Mu'mineen. And he said, O Prophet of Allah, I will take responsibility for him. And he takes this man to his home. And he goes inside. And he tells Lady Fatima that I have brought a guest with me. And so as a family, they agree that they are going to sacrifice their dinner for that night to be able to accommodate this guest. So they agree to put the children to sleep, Imam Hassan and Imam Husayn to sleep. And Imam Ali sits in front of the guest. And they turn off the lights. And Imam Ali pretends as if he is eating, but he's not really eating. One of the things, whenever we give somebody something, is we should never make them feel that we have done a favor for them. Okay? And so Imam Ali alayhi salam pretends like he's eating, but in fact himself he's not eating until the man has eaten. The next morning when they came to the Holy Prophet, the Prophet of Allah could see hunger on their face. فَتَبَسَّمَ, the Prophet smiled. And this verse of the Quran was revealed. Okay? One of the things I want to point out over here is that this was a quality that they built into their family. Even the children had developed this quality, the quality of sacrifice. One of the things we have to be able to do is to develop good qualities within our children. Sometimes what happens in our families is that we don't develop these qualities in the children. But then we expect them to come along with us. Or we force them to come along with us. For example, we haven't spoken to them about the importance of going and visiting family. But when we go and visit family, we drag them with us. We haven't spoken to them about the importance of saying the salat on time. But when the time for salat comes, we become angry upon them. This is not the way to raise children. Right? We have to work on building these values within them. The Ahlul Bayt had already built the quality of sacrifice, of ithar in the children at a very young age. Now, one of the questions that this raises for us is, what are the limits of generosity? And what are the limits of sacrifice? Because you find that there are always people who are suffering in the world. Today we see there are people suffering with hunger and need in Gaza. There are people suffering right now and they are in need in Lebanon. So what does that mean for us? Does it mean that we have to sacrifice all of the luxuries of life? That as a family, we're not able to enjoy any of the luxuries of life? For example, somebody may be very generous and they like to invite people home for dinner. So then they regularly invite people home for dinner. And they impose upon their family. And so every day their family has to cook for a guest. Every day their family has to prepare the house for the guest. And they say, but we have to be generous in our giving. So what are the limits of generosity? Do we always have to give? Do we have to give until it causes a lot of pain for us? Right? So I want to share with you two principles. The first principle is the principle of adala, of justice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, Inna Allaha ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. This is an ayah that is recited in the khutbah of Jum'ah. Surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you towards adl, towards justice, and He commands you towards ihsan, towards goodness. Okay? Now we want to pay close attention to the ideas over here. We know that the station of ihsan is above the station of adl. The station of sacrifice is above the station of being an adil. Why? Because when a person is just, it means that he doesn't take the rights of others. It means that he doesn't take the property of others. It means that he doesn't take the things that belong to other people. But the station of ihsan is even greater, because a person takes what he has and shares it with others. He takes his property and gives it to others. But when we look at this verse of the Quran, Allah mentions adl first. And then He mentions ihsan. Why does He mention adl and then ihsan? And the scholars explain to us the reason for that is that a person can never reach the station of ihsan without first developing the station of adl. We cannot do good unto others until we have learned to be just unto them. Right? In doing good, we should never take away from the rights of others. It's very important. Right? If we want to do good to others, we want to sacrifice, we want to be generous, we can do that. But in doing so, we should not be imposing and taking away the rights of other people. You know, a few weeks ago, I shared with you the example or a story from the life of Mirza Shirazi, the famous Mirza Shirazi, the one who gave the fatwa of the prohibition of consumption of tobacco. Yes. Shaheed Murtaza Mutahari narrates another story from his life. He says, this man who was so firm with the Shah of the time, he was so firm with the kuffar at that time. Inside his home, he was very soft with his family. He was very caring with his family. You wouldn't find the same firmness with his family. Okay? To the extent that he never liked to disturb his wife. Whatever she did, this great Mirza, this great Marja, wanted her to do it out of her own desire, out of her own love, and not to impose upon her. He would find it very difficult to even ask her to do something inside the house. So Shaheed Mutahari says that one day he became sick. And so he was bedridden. And so his family made soup for him. Okay? So his family made soup for him. They came, they brought it, they kept it right at the door. And they said, inshallah, he'll take it. But Mirza was too sick to get off the bed. He didn't even feel comfortable telling somebody inside the house, bring that soup for me. Right? That much of an imposition he did not want to make. So one, as we're doing goodness to others, we're being generous in the community, we're being generous in the society, we have to make sure that we are not at the same time taking away from the rights of our family. The second principle I want to share with you is the principle of moderation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells the Holy Prophet in the Quran, in Surah Al-Isra, He says, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ يَدَكَ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَىٰ عُنُقِكَ وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ. On one hand, when you give, O Prophet of God, do not tie your hands all the way to your neck. Meaning what? Meaning do not hold everything to yourself. وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ. At the same time, don't open your hands completely that you give everything away. Why? فَتَقْعُدَ مَلُومًا مَحْسُورًا. You are going to become blameworthy in the eyes of people. They say that one day a man came to the Holy Prophet and he had a dire need. So the Prophet of Allah gave to him everything he had. So when another man came to the Holy Prophet, then the Prophet did not have anything to give to this man. Right? So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Holy Prophet, when you give, practice moderation in your giving. We don't want to be in a position, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. That by giving everything, we're no longer able to take care of the needs of our family. We're no longer able to provide for the comfort of our family. Or that others are providing for the needs and the comfort of our family. Then we become blameworthy. But sacrifice is a very important value and quality that we need to develop in the community. It makes for a resilient community. It makes for a strong community. Even that community that does not have a lot of wealth, even that community that does not have a lot of clout, becomes an unbreakable community if it has the spirit of sacrifice in it. If people are able to lean on one another, if people know that their needs are going to be provided by people within the community. You know, one of the places we see this resilience today is in Lebanon. Yeah. And one of the journalists in Lebanon recounts his experience over the last few weeks. And you know, in Lebanon, as in Gaza, certain people are being targeted. Journalists are being targeted. Medical professionals are deliberately being targeted. Okay? So many journalists and medical professionals have been killed, both in Gaza and in Lebanon. So he says, a few weeks ago, 3 of my crewmen, I think 2 of them were his cameramen, were deliberately targeted and assassinated and martyred. And they were martyred when they were in their hotel. Right? So after that, he says that many of the hotels did not want to give me a place to stay, because they knew that the enemy has no moral boundaries. No matter which hotel they are in, this person could be targeted. So he said the hotels would not give me a place to stay. Some of the other journalists did not want to work with me either. They said that we could be doing work with you or traveling with you, and you could be assassinated, and we would be killed along with you. So then somebody sent a message for him and said, now you cannot find a place to live anywhere in Lebanon. And he said, you're wrong. When I went to Beirut, there were hundreds of families that got in touch with me. And they said to me, come and stay at our house. And I say to them, but your family lives in your house. They said, it doesn't matter. We are going to sacrifice. If we are to be martyred, then we are to be martyred together. So that is the spirit of sacrifice. When a community has such a spirit, it becomes an unbreakable community. Okay? Now we come back to what we are involved in. We are also trying to establish a community in the West, amongst the first communities to be established in the West. And there's a conversation that I want to have with you today that maybe I've had with some of you. But more and more I'm finding that these conversations, we have to have them over and over again. These ideas have to become ingrained now in our minds. We have to have a big picture of what we are doing. We cannot just be looking with a tunnel vision at the work that we are doing. Coming on Friday night and going home and coming again and going home. Coming for programs and then going home. We have to be able to see everything that we're doing in light of our strategy, in light of what we are trying to achieve, right? So you see that, Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If I can request the noise to be reduced from this side. So we see that we are engaging in this experiment of community building. And this is an evolving experiment. After every decade, we're finding that we're missing something. And so we are adding new factors into our experiment. When the early migrants came here to Vancouver, they had a very simple goal. Their goal was to run programs. They say that we need to be able to maintain our programs, to be able to maintain our religion, to be able to maintain the programs that we hold in the month of Muharram. And this happens in the 60s, in the 70s, and the 80s. And some new communities that have started now in the Lower Mainland, they are also going through that phase, where the focus is on holding programs. Be they spiritual programs, religious programs, social programs, recreational programs. And then after a while, we come to realize that this is not enough. That we need to do more if we are going to make sure that our children and their children are going to remain a part of this faith. It dawns upon us when we start looking at the state of our grandchildren and we start asking ourselves, what do we need to do to make sure that our grandchildren and their grandchildren are going to remain in the faith of Islam? And so come the 90s, as a community, we decide that we are needing to build multi-purpose centers. And this idea first appears in Canada in the middle of the 90s, with the first center being built in Toronto, a multi-purpose center, where people can come and have their programs, where they can come and have their sports, where they can come and have their social programs, where they can come and have their madrasas. And this is the second evolution of our experiment. And we run this experiment for the next 10 to 20 years. And whilst we realize that this is important, we also come to realize that this is not enough. And therefore you find by 2010, 2015, another realization dawns upon us. And now the realization that dawns upon us is that it's not enough for us to build multi-purpose centers. We now need to start building our own schools. And so we start building our own schools. And you will see that in that 10-year period from 2010 to 2020 or 2024 now, we have an explosion of schools developing all across Canada. Yes? From coast to coast. From Vancouver to Calgary to Edmonton to Toronto, all the way to Halifax. Somewhat in America as well. Because we realize that if we don't have our children under our own guardianship, then they may grow up in the centers, but their thinking, their ideology, their approach to life is not going to be an Islamic approach to life. And for other reasons as well. But I think we're reaching now to the end of the third evolution. And we're beginning to realize that actually what we need to do is more than that. We're starting to ask ourselves some difficult questions. For example, we're asking ourselves, is it possible for us to run our schools without having the teachers coming from our own community? Without having teachers who also have what? An Islamic understanding, an Islamic perspective for life. How do we get those teachers? How do we get that curriculum? We're starting now to ask those questions. We're starting to ask ourselves, is it possible for us to build a strong community if we do not provide for the needs of the community? Like, for example, the welfare needs of the community. Like, for example, the housing needs of the community. Like, for example, without being able to influence the thoughts and the ideas in the community. If we don't have our own media outlets, if we don't have an ability to influence culture, right? To create our own culture, a culture where Islamic thought, it grows and thrives within this environment, are we going to be able to maintain the faith of our children? If they continue to consume the other media, they continue to consume movies, they continue to consume articles and books that are not in line with Islamic thought, are we going to be able to maintain their thought? Thought is primary. From thought comes ethics. From thought comes behavior. From thought comes practice. From thought comes identity. From thought comes personality. But thought is primary. If we're not able to influence the thinking of the next generation, how are we going to maintain their faith? We're now starting to ask those questions. And suddenly the realization is sinking into us that the idea of building an Islamic community in the West cannot be limited to the idea of having Thursday night programs, of having Jum'ah prayers only. This idea of building an Islamic community actually requires us now to put Islamic thought into each and every need that the community has. Look at the way the Prophet of Allah built the early Muslim community. He didn't go around borrowing from others. Even when it came to salat, look at the example of salat. The manner of salat is unique. The clothing in salat is unique. The qibla of salat is unique. The place of salat is unique. There's a masjid. Why? Because he wanted to infuse Islamic thought. He wanted to infuse tawheed into each and every aspect of life. He didn't borrow. That's the only way that a community survives and thrives. But today we're very okay borrowing. We say, let's do the minimum that is required for us to do, and the rest of the things will be borrowed from society. Right? We'll borrow their arts. We'll borrow their styles. We'll borrow their structures. This is not going to survive. So Islamic thought has to be infused in everything that we do. And suddenly it is now beginning to dawn upon us the gravity and the stature of the task that is in front of us. If we are willing to undertake this task, then one thing we should know is that the most important quality that we will be required to have is the quality of sacrifice. These structures will not be built by themselves. Me and you will have to make sacrifices. Some of these sacrifices are sacrifices financially. Some of these sacrifices are sacrifices with our time. But some of these sacrifices are going to have to be profound sacrifices. This is ithar. This is when we live for a purpose that is greater than us. You know, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves, what is the greatest act of sacrifice that I can do in life? Shahid Mutahari asked this question. It's a very thought-provoking question. Because there's a difference between Islamic sense of sacrifice and a secular sense of sacrifice. There has to be a difference. Today our thinking is slowly being influenced with secular thought. And so sometimes you hear within the Muslim community secular thought being promoted. Sometimes if you ask a Muslim, what does Islam teach? He says Islam teaches service to human beings. Okay, we say salamna. That Islam teaches the most important thing is service to human beings. So here's a question now. What's the most important service that we can give to a human being? Somebody would say the most important service you can give to a human being is that if he is hungry, then you provide food to him. There is no doubt this is a great service to a human being. If a human being has life, he can do everything else. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He encourages us to give food. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. Okay. Somebody says the most important thing you can give to a human being is clothing, because clothing brings dignity to a human being. If a person doesn't have sufficient clothing, he feels that a part of his dignity has been taken away from him. Okay. Say what else? Say freedom. A human being needs freedom. With freedom, a human being can do a lot of things. Now Shaykh Mutahari asks a question. He said, let's say a human being has food. Let's say a human being has clothing. Let's say a human being has freedom. Okay. Then what? Is that it? What if this human being does not have good ethics? What if this human being does not know the haqq and the truth? What if this human being is spiritually poor? Are we still okay with that? Say no. The most important gift of generosity that you can give to a human being is to do his tarbiyah, to teach good ethics to him, to teach the haqq to him, to bring him on a path that's going to lead this human being towards Jannah. That is. Now, if that's what we want to do, if we want to create a community that is going to become an Islamic community, a source of guidance for our children, a source of guidance for our society, that it's not enough for us just to say, on Thursday nights we gather, on Friday night we gather, but to say, no, our gathering has a higher purpose. And that purpose is nurturing Islamic values, nurturing the truth. Then we must know that on this path, great sacrifices will have to be given. And one of those sacrifices, sometimes for some people, would be even sacrificing career choices. When we come to realize that this is what the community needs, this is what the jama'ah needs, this is what the ummah needs today for its growth. How often in making career decisions do we think about that? Today, if I were to ask you, what's the greatest need for the community? Which career? Do we know? Right? One of the greatest needs that we have, according to my understanding anyways, is the need for teachers. And sometimes a young man or young lady, they may have other ambitions, but when they realize that our goal is to build an Islamic community on Islamic principles infused with Islamic thought, it means that the people of that community have to start taking on these roles. Without that spirit of sacrifice, we will not be able to build a community that, insha'Allah, one day is going to join the community and the jama'ah and the movement of the 12th Imam when he reappears. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This message of sacrifice was taught to us by Lady Fatima alayha salam. She sacrificed so much for the sake of Islam. She sacrificed so much for the sake of teaching Islam. Every opportunity that she had, she would try to teach Islam. Whenever somebody came and knocked at her door and said, I want to learn the religion, she never closed this door. Whenever somebody came and knocked at this door and inquired for help, she never closed this door. Today we imagine ourselves sitting at the door of Lady Fatima and waiting for the blessings of Allah that will come to us from this door. Ya Fatima Zahraa, Ya bint Muhammad, أيتها البتول يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا. One more time. يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا. The door of Fatima was a door that was respected by so many. The poor would come to this door. The student would come to this door. Even the Prophet of Allah would come to this door. They say whenever the Prophet of Allah would leave the city of Medina, the house of Lady Fatima was the last house that he left from. And whenever he entered the city of Medina, the house of Lady Fatima was the first house that he came to. Towards the end of his life, the Prophet of Allah would often pass by the house and door of Lady Fatima. And he would recite from outside the house, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. He was telling the people, this is the house of my Ahlul Bayt. This is the house of those who have been purified by Allah. This door was also respected by the angel of death. It is said towards the end of the Prophet's life, he was in the house of Lady Fatima. Somebody comes and knocks at the door. Lady Fatima says to him, my father is sick today. He is not seeing any visitors. He comes and knocks at the door again. Lady says to him, my father is not seeing any visitors today. When he comes and knocks for the third time, the Prophet of Allah says to Lady Fatima, Ya Fatima, he does not knock at any door. He is only knocking at your door out of respect for your house. I will say, Ya Rasulullah, after you passed away from this world, the people came to the door of Fatima. What did they bring to the door of Fatima? They brought fire to the door of Fatima. They brought an army to the door of Fatima. They threatened the house of Fatima. Your daughter stood behind the door. She said, don't you know who is standing behind this door? They said, it doesn't matter to us. Ya Rasulallah, the days became so difficult. She would go in the streets of Medina and she would say, صبت علي مصائب لو أنها صبت على الأيام سرنا لياليا. The hardships and difficulties that befell me, if they had fallen onto the day, they would have turned them into the night. Towards the end of her life, when Lady Fatima realized that this is now the end of her life, she calls Amir al-Mu'mineen, she calls the family, she gives her wasiyah to them. She calls Lady Asma bint Umays. She says to her that whenever a body is carried, the shape of the body becomes visible. I want when my body is carried that the shape of my body should not be visible. She tells Amir al-Mu'mineen, غسلني وكفني ودفني بالليل. Oh Ali, when you wash my body, when you shroud my body, when you bury my body, bury me in the night. On the day when the time came, Lady Fatima said to the children to go towards the masjid, to go away from the house, to go and be with Amir al-Mu'mineen in the masjid. When they came back from the masjid, Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Husayn, they came to Lady Asma. They say to her, where is our mother Fatima? She say to them, your mother is resting at this time. They say to her, this is not the time our mother rests. Lady Fatima is somebody who would put the most of her effort during the day and during the night. She say to them she is resting inside the room. Imagine the moment when Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Husayn, they come into the room. They see a body lying on the ground. The body is covered in a blanket. They lift the blanket. They see the face of their mother, Fatima. Imam al-Hasan calls out to her. She says, Ya Ummah, oh my dear mother, I am Hassan. I have come to you. Imam al-Husayn says, oh my dear mother, I am Husayn. Answer my call. But there is no response coming from the body of Lady Fatima. They inform Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam alayhi salam, he comes home. He washes the body of Lady Fatima. He shrouds the body of Lady Fatima. And then he takes the body for burial. It is narrated when Amir al-Mu'mineen was burying the body of Lady Fatima, the grief was so much in the heart of Ali. The pain was so much in the heart of Ali. He addresses the Prophet of Allah and he says, Ya Rasul Allah, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. لقد استرجعت الوديعة وأخذت الرهينة. Ya Rasul Allah, you had given me an amana. You had given me a trust. Today I am returning the trust back to you. Ya Rasulullah, you ask her yourself what happened to her after you passed away. And the Imam alayhi salam, he says, as for my days, they are going to be difficult. And as for my nights, they are going to be sleepless. One more thought to share on the shahada of Lady Fatima. I will say, oh Lady Fatima, when you were buried in the middle of the night, they buried you in the darkness of the night. Your body was carried in a coffin. Nobody was able to see the shape of your body. But, oh Lady Fatima, on the day of Ashura, on the afternoon of Ashura, when your Husayn will be martyred, and the enemies will come towards the tent, and when they come towards your Zainab, they will strip and take away her covering from her. They are going to be parading her from Karbala to Kufa, and from Kufa. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Oh Allah, we ask you for the sake of Lady Fatima, بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها. Oh Allah, we ask you to hasten in the reappearance of the 12th Imam. Oh Allah, we ask you to accept our azah for Lady Fatima. Oh Allah, we ask you to accept all of our good deeds and to forgive all of our sins. Oh Allah, we ask you through the inspiration of Lady Fatima to strengthen us in our iman. Oh Allah, we ask you to strengthen us in our akhlaq. Oh Allah, we ask you to make us sincere in our intentions. Oh Allah, we ask you to increase us in our amal salih. Oh Allah, we ask you to give us the strength to refrain from your disobedience. Oh Allah, we ask you to grant us the shafa'ah of Lady Fatima on the Day of Judgment. Oh Allah, we ask you to give us the tawfiq to perform those actions that would please the heart of Lady Fatima. Oh Allah, we ask you for all those who are sick, for those who are suffering, for those who have been injured. Oh Allah, you are the Shafi. For the sake of Lady Fatima, we ask you to grant a complete and a quick recovery to all of them. Oh Allah, we ask you for our marhumin and for the shuhada of Islam. and for the shuhada on the path of Quds, and for the great shaheed. O Allah, we ask you to elevate their status and shower them with your rahmah and your maghfirah. And O Allah, we ask you to grant them a place in the vicinity of the Ahlul Bayt. O Allah, we ask you for our brothers and sisters around the world, especially our brothers and sisters in Gaza and in Lebanon. O Allah, we ask you to protect them with your protection. O Allah, we ask you to guard them with your security. O Allah, we ask you to return izzah to the Muslimin. O Allah, we ask you to strengthen their hearts. O Allah, we ask you to unite their ranks. O Allah, we ask you to remove the zalimeen from their lands. O Allah, we ask you to weaken the stratagems of the zalimeen. O Allah, we ask you to disunite the hearts of the zalimeen. And O Allah, we ask you and we implore you to hasten the reappearance of the 12th Imam and make every step of ours, every step of our community. O Allah, we ask you to make every step a step that is going to please the heart of the 12th Imam and make us that community that is going to be the cause of the reappearance of the 12th Imam. Matama Husayn. Ya Husayn.
Please make two lines facing each other for the latam.
Ya Husayn, Ya Husayn, Ya Fatima Zahraa, Ya أبيها يا فاطمة زهراء يا أم أبيها حق مانگنے دربار میں بلوایا گیا ہے یہ اجر رسالت تمہیں امت نے دیا ہے تم روئی تو ہنستے رہے کیا ظلم کیا ہے سرخ اسی غم میں ہوا گنبد خضرا یا فاطمہ زہرا یا ام ابیہا یا فاطمہ ام ابیہا یا ظلم و ستم تم پہ تھا مخدوم آئے عالم دن شب میں بدل جائے اگر سہل تیرا غم کیوں کرنا زادار کرے نوح و ماتم کم ہے جو کرے حشر تلک گریا و پرسا یا فاطمہ زہرا میں ابیہا یا فاطمہ زہرا یا صدقہ جو تیرے در کا صدا کھاتے رہے ہیں جو تیرے غلاموں کی غلامی میں پلے ہیں اب مردہ ضمیری کی مجس میں یہ بنے ہیں بے ظرف بلا بیٹے احسان خدیجہ یا فاطمہ زہرا یا ام ابیہا یا عالم کے لیے آیا نبی بن کے جو رحمت کنبے پہ اسی کے ہی ہوئی کیسی قیامت محسن کی شہادت کا سبب بن گئی امت جو حرمت کعبہ تھا اسی در کو جلایا یا فاطمہ زہرا أبيها يا فاطمة زهراء يا تحریر نبی پار کے اس طرح ستایا حسنین کو جھٹلا دیا اور تم کو رلایا اس پہ بھی جفا کرتے ہوا خوف نہ کھایا کہتے ہو جسے خود بھی نبی ابیہا یا فاطمہ زہرا یا ابیہا یا فاطمہ زہرا یا ابیہا یا حسین یا حسین
فاطمہ زہرا فاطمہ زہرا فاطمہ زہرا فاطمہ زہرا اے میری بی بی اے میری بی بی تیرے در پہ استغاثہ ہے تیرا ممنون میری شہزادی یہ جہاں سارا ہے یا زہرا یا زہرا یا زہرا تو ہمیں حفظ اور امان دے دے تو ہمیں حفظ اور امان دے دے اپنی چادر کا سائبہ دے دے تیری قدرت میں کیا نہیں بی بی تو جسے چاہے دو جہاں دے دے یا زہرا یا زہرا اے میری بی بی اے میری بی بی آنسوؤں میں دعا مانگی ہے تیری تسبیح پڑھ کے دل نے تجھے پکارا ہے یا زہرا یا زہرا تجھ کو امت نے یوں ستایا ہے تجھ کو امت نے یوں ستایا ہے مرگ محسن پہ بھی رلایا ہے تجھ کو بابا کے بعد امت نے ہائے دربار میں بلایا ہے یا زہرا یا اے میری بی بی اے میری بی بی تیرے بچوں کا غم مناتے ہیں اپنی اولاد سے کہیں بڑھ کے غم یہ پیارا ہے یا زہرا या ज़हरा फर्श मजलिस पे और मुसल्ले पर, फर्श मजलिस पे और मुसल्ले पर हर जवा कह रहा है रो रो कर, हाँ हम रहे ना रहे मगर बीबी ता क़यामत रहेगा में सरवर या ज़हरा या या ज़हरा करबला में तेरी शबी बनकर, करबला में तेरी शबी बनकर अपने बाबा की जिंदगी बनकर तेरा बचपन है सकीना बीबी और जवानी है ज़ैनबे मुज़्तर या ज़हरा या ज़हरा या वक्त आखिर है बस मेरा बीबी, वक्त आखिर है बस मेरा बीबी अनगिनत है मेरे गुनाह बीबी वास्ता तुझको तेरे बच्चों का बख्शवाना मेरे गुनाह बीबी या ज़हरा या ज़हरा या ज़हरा
या ज़हरा या ज़हरा صفای خانه‌ام دیگر به خانه بر نمی گردد پر از سوی سفر کرده به لانه بر نمی گردد غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من کسی از سینه سوزان خبر دیگر نمی گردد کسی از سینه سوزان خبر دیگر نمی گردد غریبم من 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 فلک تنهاییم دیدی ولی تنها ترم کردی گرفتی شمع بزم را چرا خاکسترم کردی غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من تو هستی مرکز هستی چرا در خانه جا داری تو هستی مرکز هستی چرا در خانه جا داری مگو دیگر غریبم من مرا داری مرا داری مگو دیگر غریبم من مرا داری مرا داری غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من غریبم من بی تو کبوتر دلم بی سینه پر نمی زند کسی به خانه علی کسی به خانه علی حلقه در نمی زند فاطمه جان حسین تو بی تو غذا نمیخورد. فاطمه جان حسین تو بی تو غذا نمیخورد. حسن ز دوری رخت خنده دگر نمیزند. حسن ز دوری رخت خنده دگر نمیزند. کلثوم از فراق تو آز سینه می کشد. حرف دگر غیر تو پیش پدر نمیزند. ای گل نازنین من، همسر بی قرین من، زینب تو بدون تو شانه به سر نمیزند. زینب تو بدون تو شانه به سر نمیزند. خیز و ز جا با علی رو به سوی خانه کن، که میخ در به سینت بوسه دگر نمیزند. که میخ در به سینت بوسه دگر نمیزند. صلوات. السلام علیک یا رسول الله، السلام علیک یا خدیجة الکبری، السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین علی بن ابی طالب، السلام علیک یا فاطمة الزهراء سیدة النساء العالمین، السلام علیک یا سید الزکی، السلام علیک یا طاهر الزکی، السلام علیک یا ابا محمد الحسن بن علی، السلام علیک یا ابا عبدالله وعلى الارواح التي حلت بفنائك، علیک منی سلام الله ابدا ما بقیت و بقی اللیل و النهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين، شفاء مریض ها، على اولاد الحسين وعلى اصحاب الحسين وعلى زینب الحسین وعلى عباس الحسین. السلام علیکم یا امة الهدى، السلام علیکم یا علام التقى، السلام علیکم یا اولاد رسول الله علی بن الحسین زین العابدین، محمد بن علی باقر علم النبین، جعفر بن محمد الصادق، موسى بن جعفر الكاظم، علي بن موسى الرضا، محمد بن الجواد، علي بن محمد الحادي، الحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، السلام علیکم یا اهل بیت النبوة. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا دليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. for شفای مریض، سلامتی حضور آقا امام زمان، جمعی شهدا رحم الله من الغرفات، هم از صلوات.
Thank you everyone for attending our program. Just a reminder that dinner will be served in the gym, inshallah. After dinner, we kindly request some volunteers for washing the pots and for other tasks in the kitchen. May Allah accept your service and du'as. Once again, thank you very much, and please recite as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.